Well, it's the sesquicentennial, so it's the 150th anniversary of the Civil War since it began, and so there's a lot of, talk about it right now. And one day I was working in one of the storage rooms, and I saw this box sitting on top of a cabinet, and I took a look at it and was really intrigued by what I saw. All these colorful envelopes with patriotic themes. Some had kind of interesting political cartoons on them, so I took a closer look and realized that there really is a story here, even though there's no writing on them. I know they came to the Historical Society in probably the 1860s or 1870s. They knew that, obviously the Civil War had was in the recent past. It was a huge event, of course, even here in Delaware, and so somebody, I don't know if it was from one person or, just kind of, once they found one, they stuck it in the collection, in the box, but somehow we have a box of about 250 or so of these envelopes.
And on the Union side, they were sold by the sutlers in every regiment. The soldiers had to buy their own stamps and their own envelopes and the stationery, and the most convenient source was the regimental sutler.
Printers picked up on the fact that soldiers had a lot of free time in camp, and this was pre-email and telephone, so the only way to communicate with friends and loved ones at home was by writing a letter.
I think they were purchased because the soldiers were already, especially in the early part of the war, very much enthused about saving the Union and preserving the Union. And this sort of represented their sentiment. It's a common sentiment of most Northerners. They did not want the South to leave.
History's not always pretty, and that's evident. A lot of them depicted Jefferson Davis, the former president of the Confederacy, being hung for his treasonous crime of seceding from the Union. So you realized how deep the feelings were.
Northerners viewed Davis and most of the high command of the South as traitors to the United States. And that's one reason why you see so much vilification, even in the envelope collection down at the Historical Society.
In mainstream political cartoons today, you don't see a lot of cartoons sort of basking in the imagery of your political opponents being hanged, at least within American politics. I think it might be easier to find cartoons with, say, Osama bin Laden or Saddam Hussein with big targets on them. So, still sort of cheerleading for death. I think it's still a theme in contemporary political cartoons. It's obviously meant to demean, to denigrate Jefferson Davis in a pretty blunt way.
These envelopes and covers were not designed to shape a historical view or to have a propaganda value. They were the way people were, the way they felt.
It's like a bumper sticker for today. You don't have a lot of space to get a message across. And so very blunt, almost crude slogans and imagery, given the space and the technology they were working with, that makes a lot of sense to me. Now, obviously, that's not illustrative of all of the debate going on. And this is the same time where you have Lincoln-Douglas debates, where Lincoln and Douglas stand up and talk for a couple hours, and people actually sit there and listen to them. So you kind of have the high end of political debate, and I think a lot of us remember that, it's talked about in school. I think one thing about these envelopes that it's nice to point out is we had the low end of political debate back then too.
Everybody thought the war would be resolved quickly, and so there were a lot of these items printed, and they do survive, and a lot of times intact because there was like a collecting mania that would go on, so sometimes people would collect the envelopes and not even use them.
So that's why you see so many of these envelopes when you go into collections and libraries and museums of Civil War documents, because they were commonly saved by the people who received them right along with the letter. So you open up a stack of letters and each one will be followed by its own envelope.
In some cases, the artwork on the envelopes took up the whole wrapper, so you couldn't even send it in the mail.
We're now, of course, in the 150th anniversary of the Civil War, and everything connected with the Civil War now has more popular demand than it had even 5 years ago. That would include these covers and envelopes. The ones that I have were a gift, 15 years ago, and at that time you could pick them up for a very reasonable price. That's really not true today. We're looking at individual unmailed envelopes, somewhere around $300 is an average price.
They were collector's items, you know, when they were first printed, and now they are again.